Well, hey everybody, it's your old pal King Oaspinator here. We just got done filming our second episode of Dragon of ICESPIRE Peak. Ran just a little over 2 hours long. Got a couple of quests done, some good development for characters and the plot line going forward. And massive improvement over the first session for everyone involved. So I'm looking forward to editing the clips together to make a complete video so we can post it on YouTube. So let's get started. Let's see, let's just hit play. There we go. Alright, yeah. Footage looks good. Sound's off. Oh, I guess I must have turned the volume down on the laptop and didn't turn it back up. No. It sounds at 100. What the hell? Why is there no sound on this video? Hugh Jackman, get your ass over here. We hired a new cameraman. It's TV and Films Hugh Jackman. Why are you dressed like that, Hugh?
Hey, bub. Yeah, it's my Weapon X costume. I like using it for filming and editing because I got the nifty, gizmo helmet here. It's pretty cool.
Okay, well, that has nothing to do with anything. Look, for some reason the footage we just shot, it doesn't have any volume. There's, like, no sound coming through it.
When I was filming it, I popped my claws, because I'm Weapon X. And, how people know that I'm Weapon X unless I was popping my claws. And I sort of accidentally hit the mute button.
What? So, like, how deep into this before you caught wind of your accident and you unmuted it?
I didn't notice that until after we were done, bub, and I was putting up the camera.
What? What? Oh my God! Just get out of here! I don't even want to look at you right now. Yeah, those magnificent abs and pectoral muscles. That's what you get when you do charity work with celebrities. I mean, yeah, it's all well and good that we're gonna get some, like, donations for, like, cancer kids, but I mean, oh my God, I just really would like a professional goddamn cameraman. This is just amateur alley in here. Anyway, okay, so just gotta get my thoughts together. What to do? I have 2 hours of D&D footage. Our entire second session recorded and laid out, and it was actually pretty good. Had a nice murder mystery, and there's no volume. Oh no. Oh no. Oh no! Okay, I think I can salvage this thing. Not obviously gonna get everyone back together so they can just replay the second session all over again, or try to do, overdubbing of the voices. No, I'm going to get everyone to come back through here one at a time, and I'm going to interview them to get their personal recap of what they remember about the adventure. And maybe in a way we can have kind of like an interesting little experiment here on how different people remember the same events. And yeah, okay, so we can do this. It's not a complete total loss. Anyway, we're going to start off. We got our dungeon master, Raymond Joshua, in the house. So say hi to everybody, Raymond.
Hi.
Oh, well, all right. Thanks for coming back so we can record this. I guess we'll just start off basically with, how did the session start off?
Well, this session started off with a dream sequence. Hartman started off having a dream that he was back in the temple that the dwarves were excavating in the previous session, where he was facing off against a phantom of a dwarf that was horned and wearing evil-looking robes and was lashing out at him with spectral pseudopods. He was not having any luck fighting it, and it was doing a lot of psychic damage to him, so he fled, and upon leaving the temple room, he woke up and realized that he had dropped his bow and left that behind in the temple. But he was very much freaked out by the experience and doesn't seem to be inclined to want to go back. Then we switched over to Reed the Firbolg, where he woke up and realized that his herbalist kit was missing, and he spent about an hour looking around the room, and after a successful perception check, he was able to find it tucked up underneath his bed. He didn't bother to look inside of it to see if anything was missing. He just stuck the kit into his backpack and went about his day. And so Hartman and Reed met with Inverna down in the inn where they had been staying the night. And she was going to stay behind at the inn in town this time so she can wait for the arrival of Don John Raskin. And so then Reed and Hartman, along with a rock gnome named Pickled Pete, who's partnered up to be Reed's sidekick, went down to the miners' exchange and took the big bag of gemstones they had found at the temple and exchanged them for gold coins. This impressed the owner / guildmaster of the miners' exchange, a dwarf woman named Halia Thornton. And she asked them a few questions about what were their general impressions about Town Master Harbin Wester. And she seemed to like the fact that they were a little skeptical about the guy, and she said that if they ever come back in with some more finds like the gemstones, maybe she might have a little extra work for them or something. So we'll just see how that plot thread develops as things goes along. Let's see, after that, they went to the Lion's Shield Cotter to buy some weapons, because they decided not to go back to the Dwarven excavation, and so Hartman was going to need a new bow. He instead decided to buy a hand crossbow and some bolts, and Reed also picked up a bunch of darts. They actually ended up both buying darts, because they're not that expensive, and it's a cheap, simple little throwing weapon. And he ended up coming up into a little bit of use at one point later on down the line. And so they, basically got their stuff situated and ready to head out, and then they went on to go find that acolyte Ashante, who's at Umbridge Hills Windmill, that Harbin Wester wants them to bring back to town.
So tell me, how exactly did this quest to go to Umbridge Hill to rescue Adabra Grin go for you guys?
From an adventure design point of view, the Umbridge Hill quest I found is kind of a weird combination of both incredibly simplistic and short, but also potentially overwhelming by having a manticore be the creature they have to face. Since Reed is a Firbolg and is kind of generally regarded as like a creature of magic and not really part of the humanoid gang in the way that a lot of the other races are, I decided that the Manticore would speak to the Firbolg and tell them hey, mind your own business, or otherwise they'll eat your pets, referring to the human and the rock gnome that were with them. And this gave them an opening to be able to negotiate, and they managed to successfully persuade the Manticore to leave. I gave the Manticore a little bit of backstory about his whole reason for attacking the windmill and trying to get to
Adabra, is, he and his mate got driven out of their lair by the dragon Cryovane when he took over ICESPIRE Peak. And apparently his mate's been sulking. She's been depressed ever since they lost their lair and not eating. And so he figured, he'd be able to help her out, get her to cheer up a little bit if he got her favorite snack, which happens to be blondes. And so that's why he's at the windmill. But by bringing up the fact that they're out questing around trying to get weapons and other preparations so they could fight and take out the dragon, they were able to convince the Manticore to leave the lady in the windmill alone, and they went off their way. And I figured since they did actually have to actively come up with excuses to tell the Manticore and use ability checks, it counts as a defeat. And so they got experience for that reward. And they bought a couple potions, and Adabra did not want to go back to town. They tried to persuade her, but she had a really high DC in order to be able to successfully persuade her to leave, and they did not get there. So she wrote them a note so that when they do finally return to town, they can turn that into Harbin, and he can at least have some assurance that she is safe and things are okay, and they actually did their job. But before they went back to town, Pickled Pete, the rock gnome, mentioned, since he's a prospector from these areas, and the whole reason he joined the party is because, he can kind of like a trail guide. He knows where everything is. He can lead them to most locations. He mentioned that Umbridge Hill is basically on the way to Nomengard, and if they're going to be going to Nomengard afterwards anyway, they're going to be passing right back by Umbridge Hill, so they might as well go now. They'd have enough time to be able to get there by sunfall, and since it's a little gnome village built into a cliff face, they'd be able to spend the night there and everything be fine. Then they could be able to talk to the king and get the magic weapons and all that kind of stuff. So they agreed to go along with that, and they set off.
Seems a little anticlimactic to me. So, next on was to Gnome Garden, yes? What happened there?
Now, Nomengard's the first scenario from this adventure module that I've modified. I found the premise of just going in and searching around for a mimic to be, on its face, just kind of a little, boring. So I spiced it up a little bit. I still kept the basic scenario that you have all these gnomes hiding out in these warrens, and they're paranoid of each other because they think there's a mimic or some sort of generic shapeshifter inside their village because a couple of their compatriots had disappeared. I took the mimic out of it. They're just scared of a mimic because it's kind of like a boogeyman for the rock gnomes. They like to tinker with objects, and so a creature that assumes the shape of objects and then likes to eat things like gnomes has a particular resonance for them. But the truth is that it was actually a really big murder mystery. The chamberlain to the two kings of the village, who is a forest gnome and is not at all from this area. He actually comes from the south and east of the mountain range in a place called the Desserin Valley. He signed on to be the court chamberlain of this little community of gnomes. And the two gnomes that disappeared were actually his murder victims. They had been sent off to go pick up a scroll for him at a town called Tribor and then bring it back. And then a couple days after they brought it back, he killed them so they couldn't say anything about the truth about what he was doing. And what he was doing was translating that scroll into Gnomish so that he could activate and finish building a devastation orb, which is a plant for something for much further down in the campaign than what's included in just ICESPIRE Peak.
Did they catch the killer?
Oh yeah, they totally caught the killer. They found the bodies in a barrel, and after doing some searching for clues and talking around, they found the devastation orb and the instruction manuals and the forest gnome's work desk in the workshop. The forest gnome's named Sork, by the way, and they managed to, by using Furbolg managed to use a charm spell on him to basically get him to spill the beans on everything he was doing and about his big plan. He was going to get the devastation orb activated so he could use it to cause earthquakes and threaten to destroy the entire village of Nomengarden if they didn't make him king and depose the two rulers. And everything was fixed, and they got a nice little collection of magic items. And that's basically where the adventure ended this time.
Okay, and now we are joined by Z-Dog, who plays the Firbolg named Reed. Tell us a bit about how the game started out this session. Wait, what? That was old footage. Jackman, Hugh Jackman, get your ass back over here.
Hey, what's up, bub?
What's up with the stock footage of Z-Dog giving us the Fonzie thumbs up over there?
Oh, he hasn't made it to the studio yet, sir.
He hasn't what? What do you mean he's not going to make it over here? God damn it! You tell that son of a... And now, last, but certainly not least, we are joined by the ice cream truck killer, who is playing Hartman Bronislav, our human fighter. So, tell us, ice cream truck killer, how did the session start off for you today?
So, my character, Hartman Bronislav, he woke up in a dream, he woke up in a dream in the ruins that we explored on the last session, and his comrades, Ivalera, was in Verna, and Reed were both dead beside him, but he was the only one standing, and there was a dwarven warrior standing near the altar, and the entire room was lit in the altar room, and Hartman was a bit startled at first, so he wasted his first action just sort of screaming at it, and it attacked him and did some pretty heavy damage. He tried defending himself, but a couple swipes from his sword proved kind of ineffective against the dwarf, and so he decided to book it out of there, and that's when he woke up with 3 HP, because psychological damage evidently can really do a number on you. So he goes down into the tavern area where everybody's meeting, and realizes that his bow is missing. He left it back in the ruins, and he starts talking with everybody about the dream, and they don't seem too concerned at first. So we get all of the gems that we got from the ruins, where Hartman had found a little opening, and in one of the altars, and we went down to the gem store and basically sold off all the gems, split up the cash. Hartman got another little crossbow, a little hand bow, which seemed to be a bit more nifty with bolts and stuff. Traded in some arrows. It was very expensive, and he ended up kind of broke after that. And then we visited the I forgot his name already, but it was the main quest giver who gave us the last couple of quests we'd done, and he told us to go to meet up with this lady up on a hill to the east, I believe, where our next part of the adventure began.
So tell me, how exactly did this quest to go to Umbridge Hill to rescue Adabra Grin go for you guys?
So, Hartman, Reed, and Pickle Pete went up to Umbridge Hill to go tell Adabra, this lady who works with healing potions up in a windmill up on Umbridge Hill, to try and get the hell out of Dodge before the dragon began to harass her in the windmill. So we make our way up the hill, and there's this manticore, and that manticore is trying to break into her windmill, and so she looks out the window, and she sees us, and she starts screaming at us to try and help. So we look down at the manticore. We're a good 90 feet away, and I'm thinking to my character's thinking to himself, man, I don't think we can sneak up on this thing. I don't know what we're gonna do. That thing looks pretty pretty tough, and it was, because it is a manticore, and we are just people, except Reed. Reed's oh no, yeah, Pickle Pete's a gnome. I think I'm the only person. I'm the only human. Hartman, Bronislav. Hey, so Reed is a furbulg, and I suppose that gives him brownie points with the manticore. So we walk up, and the manticore looks and says something along the lines of, "Stay out of this, furbulg, or you and your pets will get eaten," or something. And not that we didn't take too kindly to that, but we kind of knew that we were a little out of our league in this situation. So we talked to Pickle Pete, we talked to each other about it, and try to see if we can negotiate something, as this creature is in fact intelligent enough to speak. And we did. We did actually manage to get him to buzz off. He told us a little bit about how the dragon had taken the lair of him and his honey, and they sort of, well, his honey was a little depressed, and her favorite food was blonde women. So that was obviously one of the reasons he decided to go ahead and try and get to Lady Adabra, who was blonde and a woman, and try and offer that up to see if he could get his depressed honey a little bit, little thing to snack on for depression, right? So for the manticore flies off, we go in and talk to the lady, try to get her to leave the area. She seems very content, which is weird. She seems actually quite obstinate about leaving the windmill, which is odd because a manticore just tried to ransack it, and we would have expected her to be a little more forthgiving in trying to leave. But no.
Seems a little anticlimactic to me. So, next on was to Gnome Garden, yes? What happened there?
So, Reed, Hartman, Pickle Pete all walked up the mountains to get to Nomengard. Found a canyon, went into it, and there was this pool. It was sort of being filtered by a waterfall that had all these lovely mushrooms that the gnomes of the area would use to make their fermented wines and spirits and such, which they would trade with. So the rock gnomes were kind of settled in, and we went ahead and made our way to the entrance, where we were actually confronted by one gnome who was on a rope bridge, just about 15-20 feet, about a story above us on one of the opposing cliff sides, and he asked us to halt, and didn't really trust our buddy Pickle Pete. So Pickle Pete just sort of had to chill at the front while we went inside. Managed to actually gain the trust of the gnome with the crossbow, and avoided a little bit of conflict. Then made our way into the keep, where we stumbled into a kitchen after a couple of hallways later, and we'd heard that a mimic was kind of terrorizing the, or at least rumors of a mimic were spreading, and a couple of gnomes got eaten, and there were witnesses of that, and it was kind of a big deal because mimics are kind of like a natural predator of gnomes, apparently, especially rock gnomes, because they're tiny, and yeah. So Hartman kind of blurts it out like, "Hey, we're looking for a mimic." And in the kitchen full of all these gnomes, they all start freaking out, and we sort of realized that was probably not the smartest thing to do. So we, Reed and I, it's just Reed and I at this point. Reed actually shrunk himself so that he wasn't so tall, and my dude is only 5'6", so he's pretty much just walking normally in these hallways, just a little stunted in the doorways, but whatever. So we go up around this spiral staircase, sort of ignoring the kitchen scene, after getting a little tip from one of the cooks about who to possibly talk and figure out more about this mimic nonsense. We see this coming around the turn. We see this one room where there's a giant crossbow pointed straight at us. And there's this gnome lady on top, and she's like, "Hey, don't come in here. We got problems." So we say, "Okay, well, we're here to solve your problems. What's your problem?" And she's like, "Hey, there's a mimic, and we think he's in the winery." And we said, "Okay, let's check out the winery." And she's like, "Okay, I'm gonna guard this with my life." All right. So we go into the winery, or at least the wine storage place with all the barrels, and we start poking around. Reed uses detect magic. Nothing. So Hartman and Reed, we take a look around and keep looking, poking at some barrels, and we actually find one barrel with 2 dead bodies, 2 dead gnome bodies of the rock variety, and one has its throat slit, and the other had been strangled. So these guys had sort of been shoved into this barrel, and we decided that this is definitely not the doings of a mimic in this case.
Did they catch the killer?
We actually managed to figure out who the killer was. He was it was one of this forest gnome who seemed newly instituted into the Rock Gnome Society, and his plan was quite simple. Basically, cause disarray, cause distrust amongst the gnomes with this mimic nonsense. Strangle a couple of the rock gnomes, shove them in a barrel. You know, who'll find them? It's not like there's not many places to hide. Use that to sort of like a cover-up story while he figures out this whole destruction orb nonsense, trying to overthrow the entire kingdom. And the kings, there's 2 kings. They are in a lovely romance with one another. Are sort of at the folly of this rumor, and they themselves are extremely paranoid, and so they aren't really doing the whole ruly thing with their iron fist at the throne. And so Sork is having plenty of time managing to lay out his master plan of overthrowing the kingdom. So these 2 rock gnomes we meet, they're these tinkerers, they're lovely people. They sort of help us out, and we managed to, my buddy Reed actually, Hartman, Reed manages to charm the Sork fella, the forest gnome, into basically confessing everything in front of the other 2 rock gnomes, and that pretty much ended that dispute quite quickly, which was very convenient, because I kind of had a clue that there was something up with the forest gnome to begin with, but I really didn't think it was that in depth. I figured more like there was something up with the kings actually, but they were all rock gnomes, so I guess birds of a feather kind of deal. Anyway, we tied them up, and we tied up the forest gnome. I think he's going to trial, probably gonna get fucking executed because he's killed 2 rock gnomes. Go figure. And we got plenty of XP and plenty of magic items inside of the treasury that they let us kind of run around through for about 30 minutes, which is pretty dope. So yeah, good quest. Kind of had a lot of fun. I was a little, I'll admit, it was really intense, kind of poking around the winery. I really expected to fight a mimic, and man, if we had to fight a mimic, I'd have been screwed. Me, most certainly. I was squishy. I got like 13 hit points. And yeah.
Okay, well, we're going to finish off with Raymond Joshua one last time, asking him, so, what's next for session 3?
Well, the next section is going to be a little bit more directed than the previous 2 in terms of like being open-ended on where they decide to go, because when they get back to town in this next session, Don John Raskin will be there, and so they're going to have to go off on the Mountain Toes gold mine adventure. There are some nice hanging chads that still have to be dealt with. They have heard rumors about the Tower of Storms. Sork still has to be dealt with since he was captured and not killed, and they're going to have to decide whether or not they're going to leave the Devastation Orb with the gnomes or if they're going to take it with them, and how to figure out how to possibly translate the portion of the scrolls that has not already been transcribed in Gnomish in the other notebook. Also, like players being players are, they might follow up on leads that are not necessarily important to the central plot right now, but are for further things. But Sork did mention aloud the name of the Cult of the Black Earth, and so anyone out there who's familiar with Princes of the Apocalypse and the Desserin Valley, you might be able to start to kind of put some pieces together about where this might lead after Cryovane is dealt with, roughly around the time, hopefully, the players reach 5th or 6th level. So we'll see. Fingers crossed. But yeah, basically, just for next session, they're going to be meeting Don John Raskin and going off to go help him secure the mine so that the gold can start flowing back to the coffers of Neverwinter.
Well, that's it for this week's episode of Tabletop IRL, Dragon of ICESPIRE Peak. Just wanted to give a special shout out to our Dungeon Master, Raymond Joshua, and to the Ice Cream Chuck Killer for showing up to do some interviews, to helping us salvage something out of this week's unfortunate accident. And as to that other person who shall remain unnamed for now, let us say, hope he burns in eternal damnation forever and ever in the fiery pits of a smoking hell of his own making for having disappointed Team Waspinator in such a sad fashion. But anyway, hit like and subscribe, leave a comments. Leave a comment if you think that the Ice Cream Chuck Killer deserves some bonus experience for actually showing up and doing his duty as part of Team Waspinator. And that'll do it. I guess we can go to credits now or something. Hugh Jackman, aren't you supposed to be running the camera? Hello? Oh god, he's playing some fucking VR game. Ay. Just can't get any good help these days. Damn it, Jackman! I told you your ass was fired! Get the hell out of my studio and don't come back!